Tonight we're going to be talking about nutritional myths. This is a big show. I picked 7 really great myths to kind of debunk this evening. And so as we go through this, if you're wanting to understand a little bit more about weight loss, make sure you pay attention to the very end, because I've got a really big myth that I'm going to bust on weight loss plateaus. So those of you who've ever, even in weight gain too, those of you who've ever struggled either trying to put weight on or trying to take weight off, there's some really huge myths around that topic, and I will be covering that topic tonight. So make sure you tune in, because it's going to be the last one that we cover. So let's dive into nutritional myths. Okay. So, you know, who do you believe? There's so much misinformation that's being propagated both on the internet and magazines, newspapers, even by doctors. I mean, some doctors are some of the worst at kind of promoting some of the biggest myths. And so myth number 1 that I want to talk about is the sugar myth, or really more specifically, it's the fructose myth. Now, how many of you have ever been told that fructose is healthier than regular sugar? Now, if you've been told that, just type in fructose right now. So what we hear often is that fructose, because it comes from fruit, like this is the kind of the mantra, right, is healthier than sugar. Now, first of all, sugar's not good for you. And second of all, fructose is not good for you either. Now, and when I'm saying fructose and sugar, I'm not referring to the fructose that's naturally occurring in fruit. And I'm not talking about sugar that's naturally occurring sugar in fruit and other plant-based foods. I'm talking about the highly refined, highly processed out fructose that is extrapolated out of predominantly corn. If we look at the United States, it's corn fructose, high fructose corn syrup. Okay, so when you look at a food label, one of the things they're trying to do nowadays is they're trying to trick you. Instead of saying corn syrup or high fructose corn syrup, they're now trying to use this natural sweetener. And what does that mean? It comes from nature. Yeah, it sure does. But plutonium also comes from nature, and you don't want to go hang around some radioactive plutonium. My point is, just because it says natural doesn't mean that it's healthy. There are things in nature that are not good for us. Corn syrup is one of them. When we extrapolate out fructose, you have to understand that fructose is not metabolized the same way as sugar. So first of all, in my opinion, it's not healthier than sugar. Sugar's not healthy either. So this is not me saying eat sugar but don't eat fructose. This is me saying you shouldn't really eat either one of these things when they're highly refined. But fructose has to basically, it can't be metabolized like regular sugar. It's got to be metabolized, and it's broken down through the liver. So in my opinion, one of the reasons why we're seeing so many people struggle with metabolic syndrome, and one of the elements in particular with metabolic syndrome is an elevation in triglycerides. So we're seeing an elevation in triglycerides for many people as a result of the overabundance of fructose being used to sweeten everything from children's cereal to bread, to candy, to chewing gums, to, you know, you name it. There's fructose pretty much in everything that is being sweetened, at least in the United States. And so corn syrup is not better for you, or fructose is not better for you than sugar. So that's myth number 1. So don't fall kind of victim to that mentality that if it's natural because it's fructose, it's somehow better for you. If you see fructose, high fructose corn syrup, or any derivative of those terms, including natural sweetener, ask the question, is this really what I want? Now, on that same note, I forgot to mention something, because it's not always corn syrup, right? Sometimes you'll see a product that is sweetened with concentrated fruit juice, okay? This is going to be super high in fructose, and it's probably not something that you should be consuming on a regular basis either. So, you know, where you'll see a lot of this is like your jams or your jellies, things of that nature, where they're trying to use something that's more natural, right? Because a lot of times people skip over sweetened with concentrated apple juice or sweetened with concentrated grape juice. No, that stuff is just as deadly with fructose as corn syrup is, only maybe instead of being genetically modified, corn. These other things can sometimes be on the can or on the jar, and they're from an organic fruit. Still highly concentrated in fructose, still not good for you. So keep that in mind. So let's see, number two. Number two, your doctor knows more about nutrition than you do. The average doctor knows less than you do, and this is not an assault or an insult to doctors. It's just a truth. The average doctor, when they go through medical training, has less than 7 hours of nutrition. So, nutrition being one of the fundamental sciences of human health, how can we take a doctor who is supposed to understand human health and understand human disease, who takes less than 7 hours of nutrition? Now, you ask a number of doctors and they'll tell you they have even less than that. They didn't actually get 7 hours, or that the nutritional class that they got was 7 hours on make sure that, that you tell people about calories and don't eat too many calories. Like, it's the type of nutritional training that they get. It's actually quite comical. And so less than 7 hours is bad enough, but less than 7 hours of the type of nutritional training can be even worse. So if you're going to your doctor and you're expecting that the advice that you're going to be getting is sound nutritional information, know that your doctor, unless they have some type of postgraduate training in advanced nutrition, to give you an example of abbreviations or initials to look for, ACBN. If you see this discrimination behind the doctor's name, so DACBN would stand for Diplomate American Clinical Board of Nutrition. This is where I received my postdoctoral training in nutrition, but this is actually the only board certifying agency for the postgraduate level in clinical nutrition that exists. And there are only, maybe 350 in total of doctors with the delineation DACBN. So we're not super common, but there's a minimum for this criteria to have more than 300 hours. So you go from 7 to 300. Well, that's a pretty big discrepancy. That's a pretty big gap now. And I'm using this as an example. One of the common things I hear doctors say is to get better nutrition in order to grow or to gain weight. It's just bad advice all the way around. So if you're going to your medical doctor to get nutritional advice, unless they have some type of postgraduate training and extensive training at that, then you probably know more about nutrition than they do. And this is really the part that angers me the most is, as a doctor, I'm not an OB-GYN, so I'm not going to do something beyond the scope of my ability to help somebody. And so like doing a gynecological exam would not be something I would make an attempt at doing. No more than a doctor who's not trained in nutrition should make an attempt at giving nutritional advice. It just isn't, well, it's not a good standard and it's not a good ethic. So if your doctor's divvying out nutritional advice but has that less than 7 hours of training, it's time to really ask deeper questions or find another doctor who has a specialty or subspecialty in nutrition where you can actually get meaningful advice that matters. Because the quantity of people I've seen over the last 20 years in my practice, and I've seen thousands and thousands of cases of autoimmune disease go in remission as a result of diet change, simply diet change. But in all those cases, I've never once seen or heard of a person coming into me after visiting with their rheumatologist or visiting with their endocrinologist say that diet or nutrition had any role to play in their autoimmune condition. So in essence, of all the people I've ever treated, thousands of cases of autoimmune disease that goes away with diet change, none of them were ever told by their other doctors that diet had anything to do with their autoimmune disease. Matter of fact, most of them were told that diet had nothing to do with their autoimmune disease. And we know that that's not true. So again, if you've gone to a regular doctor and they've told you nutrition has nothing to do with your illness, and they don't have a delineation or an additional postgraduate training that's extensive, then you know that advice is coming from a place of ignorance. And this is, again, this is what makes me angry. It's one thing to say, look, I really don't know. Why don't we send you to a nutritionist who maybe can help you with the nutritional correlation between autoimmune disease, versus saying, no, it has nothing to do with diet. Like that is a very, very big difference in two outcomes. So again, doctors knowing more about nutrition, that's a myth. And so if you're trying to rely on your doctor for good nutritional information, they have no training additionally outside of their graduate medical school, then you probably already know more about nutrition than they do. Let's talk about myth number 3. Myth number 3 is vegetable oil. And what I mean by that is vegetable oil is even a vegetable, right? Vegetable oil is really not a vegetable typically, but I'm going to go deeper than that. Vegetable oil is not a vegetable. Vegetable oil is generally derived from corn or soy. So when you see vegetable oil on a product or a package, you can pretty much guarantee that you're getting genetically modified corn or soybean oil, neither of which are vegetables. Corn is a grain and soy is a legume. So, you know, neither are really truly vegetables, but it sounds healthy and it gives a healthy connotation to say vegetable oil. Now, one of the problems with these vegetable oils is they're super high in omega-6. And if you've read No Grain, No Pain, you know that the omega-6, omega-3 fatty acid balance or ratio is very, very important for modulating inflammation and pain. And if you eat or consume high levels of vegetable oil, and this includes seed oils, like, for example, rapeseed or canola oil, which is another we could add to this list. So we'll just put canola right here. Canola oil they call it oftentimes organic. And again, it's kind of confusing because how can canola oil be organic when rapeseed itself, which is what canola is, it's genetically modified rapeseed. How can you call something that is genetically modified in its origin organic? It doesn't make sense. But canola oil or other vegetable oils are extremely high in omega-6 fatty acids. And so if you're using them in salad dressings, if you're using them in foods, then what ends up happening is you throw this omega-6, omega-3 balance off. And when you throw that balance off, it really can create an increased risk for inflammatory disorders like heart disease, like cancer and other chronic inflammatory problems. So if you're consuming high quantities of vegetable oil because you've heard that it was a vegetable and that it's healthy, and like this, to me, I don't even know how it makes the list, because at this point, I would hope at this day and age, all of you really know this, but I had to put it on the list because it's still one of those things that's so common that's on those food labels is vegetable oil. They still use that as a tool to make or to trick people into thinking that it's healthy. Okay, myth number 4. This one shouldn't be on the list either, but again, it's such a common thing to hear, and I still hear it almost on a daily basis in my practice. Eggs are bad. Eggs are bad for you because they're high in cholesterol. Now, if you want to do a really deep dive, we could do an entire show, and as a matter of fact, I have done entire shows on the cholesterol myth, and I would encourage you, because we're not going to do a deep dive tonight on that. If this is the first time that you're hearing me talk about cholesterol being elevated is a myth, it doesn't really contribute to heart disease unless you have something called hyperlipoproteinemia, which is a genetic form of familial hypercholesterolemia. Cholesterol really doesn't increase your risk for any disease. And because eggs are higher in cholesterol, they've been demonized for decades, since the early 80s, they've been demonized. But eggs are actually one of the best sources of biologically high value protein. Now, if you're following a vegetarian diet, and, you know, part of a vegetarian diet, some vegetarians do eat eggs. It's a great source of protein in a vegetarian diet, where you're going to get a source of protein that's complete, meaning it has all of the essential amino acids within it in a ratio that is going to help your body heal and repair and maintain muscle mass and maintain adequate protein stature. So eggs are an excellent source of protein. As a matter of fact, they're the most highly biologically valued protein above any other form of protein that we could use. So if you're looking at how can you increase the protein in your diet and you're looking for a good way to do that, eggs are a great way to do that. And don't throw away the yolk where the cholesterol is. Cholesterol is good for you. Remember, women, cholesterol is a precursor. It helps you make estrogen and progesterone. Men, cholesterol helps you produce testosterone. Also remember that yolk is very rich in B vitamins and rich in a substance called choline, which is very, very important for long-term memory. Remember, there's a lot of new research coming out that shows that not having adequate cholesterol actually increases your risk for dementia, actually increases your risk for hormone deficiencies and hormone imbalances. So we don't want to go crazy on cutting all the eggs out of our diet, because somewhere along the line, cholesterol was demonized incorrectly. So eggs are great for you. Eat them. And yes, you can eat them every day. That's, something else. If you want to have 2 or 3 eggs a day, go for it. It's not really going to create a heart disease increase as a result of elevating your cholesterol. So eggs are good for you. Let's bust that myth. Hey, don't forget to check out the rest of the series right here. Make sure you hit subscribe below. And as always, thanks for tuning in.